Sarah, the Sentencing Council has just published some new guidelines for cases involving domestic abuse, and you often represent clients accused of violent offences, whether that's in a domestic context or otherwise. What do defence practitioners like you or solicitors need to know about these new guidelines?
Two things. The first is a practical one, which is that the guidelines aren't coming out until the 24th of May of this year. They won't be in force until then, which means we've got some time to read them, absorb them, and think about how they're going to impact on our conduct of cases that are involving offences committed in a domestic context. The second element that we need to think about is the fact that if you look at any of the headlines about these guidelines, it appears that more people may well be liable to go to prison.
And what's in the new guidelines that suggests more people are going to go to prison?
First and foremost, it's the fact that the guidelines acknowledge that within the context of domestic abuse, harm is not always of a physical nature. The obvious example is the offence of coercive and controlling behaviour, where a great deal of damage can be done to a victim without there being any physical harm at all. And judges are being encouraged to acknowledge the fact that non-physical harm can cross the custody threshold. The second thing that's important in this is that judges are being encouraged to be sceptical in how they treat the expressed wishes of victims. This means that when victims, for example, put in a plea for clemency for an offender, a judge won't necessarily take that into account to the offender's benefit, because of course those pleas for clemency may well have been elicited from threats from the offender, or simply as a result of the fact that the offender and the victim are in a very complicated, very conflicted relationship, and emotionally it may well be that the victim is not particularly reliable in the wishes that they express.
And do the new guidelines herald any changes to sentencing numbers?
Not at all. There's no offence of domestic abuse. These sentences express a principle that judges are going to be obliged to apply as a kind of overarching consideration in their approach to sentencing any and all offences that occur within a domestic context.